Afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the next instalment of the Enterprise Nation Hello World Small Business Support webinars. Thanks for joining us today. We have Catherine Erdly here, who will be going through some of our topics on how your retail business can succeed online and offline. What I'll do just now is I will just give a little intro to Enterprise Nation and then hand directly over to Catherine and give you a little bit more insight into who we are, what we do, and how Catherine's been involved with us. So if you're not familiar with Enterprise Nation, we are a small business network. We support small businesses, micro businesses to start and grow throughout the year. We typically serve about 500,000 small businesses every year through our community platform. So we connect businesses to all the support they need through content, offers, discounts, training and events similar to this. We have a daily lunch and learn on the platform, and you can connect with other small businesses and advisors such as Catherine to support your business with more one-to-one support. We also have sponsored campaigns where either local authorities or corporate organisations will reach out to us to support their small businesses. For example, female entrepreneurship. Our mental well-being campaign Heads Up, supporting entrepreneurs through the pandemic, feeling of isolation and just getting that connection while we couldn't all be together. We support student startups through Next Generation, and we have a sustainability campaign planned called Planet with Purpose. We also reach out quite often to our members and our subscribers to hear about the business support that they need. So we ask them to raise their hand for the topics that they're really interested in learning more about. And some of that comes about in our webinars, such as today, or they can come about in some of the grant programs that we will support our businesses with. So who is an Enterprise Nation member? So our businesses are micro and small businesses, as I say, typically less than 10 employees, but small business, but big on ambition, starting their business from their spare room. And they're looking to get support from our content, our advisors, to understand what the next steps in their business should be. And as I say, we work with some of our global brands to support small businesses. We ran a program with Salesforce, a grant program last year to support businesses pivoting during the pandemic. We ran our small business accelerator with Amazon, supporting businesses to go online and do more online. And Catherine will touch on some of that topic today. And we like to sort of reach out to players in the startup ecosystem to support the businesses we work with in our community and who visit our platform to thrive and grow. So part of this workshop is really around our focus on the reopening. So we've started a campaign called Hello World, where we opened a pop-up shop in Oxford Street to support online businesses who were either started during the pandemic or really had taken their business to the next level online to actually get involved in physical space, because a lot of the businesses we work with told us that they had made firm plans to reopen, but they needed support with marketing, they needed support with planning, and they needed support with omni-channel advice, how they could keep their business motoring online as well as in person. And that's some of the topic that Catherine will touch on today as well. So I'm going to hand over to Catherine. Just so you know, we're going to have Q&A at the end of the session. If you think of anything while Catherine's chatting on, feel free to drop a comment in the chat. We can also take some interactive questions if Catherine's open to it, but we'll definitely have a dedicated spot at the end of the session for Q&A. So yeah, feel free to raise your hand then or drop a comment in the chat. And we'll also be able to connect you with Catherine after the session. You'll receive a follow-up email where you can connect with her directly. So I'm going to go ahead and hand over to Catherine now.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Let me just share my screen. Let's see, how does that look?
Looking good.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so hi, everybody. Welcome. Happy, what day of the week is it? Tuesday. So just very quickly to touch on who I am. My name's Catherine Erdly. I'm a small business retail expert. I'm also an advisor member of Enterprise Nation, which means that I am active on the platform supporting some of the small businesses that Enterprise Nation reaches. I am also a Forbes.com contributor on the subject of starting and scaling a retail business, and I'm a frequent speaker and writer on the subject of what's happening in retail and what's happening next. You can find me most frequently over on Instagram, and that's my website details. But as we touched on earlier, then you will be getting some follow-up details. So I'm just going to dive straight in then. What we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about this situation that we find ourselves in right now. We're going to talk about small businesses or small, and there's a mixture, so small and large businesses opening up now, retail, thinking about basically how can you make the most of this time? How can you be getting yourself ready, getting your business ready? And then we're going to touch on a few of the challenges in terms of things like the way that customer behavior has shifted over this time. And also looking at things like your online presence, touching on that, the importance of it, how to keep it going, and a few ideas around how do you end up combining the two, because of course running an online business is a full-time job, running an offline business is a full-time job. So when we talk about coming out of lockdown and we talk about taking on these additional layers or maintaining things like your digital presence, we do have to be mindful of the fact that this has to work within the constraints of your own business. I'm happy to make it pretty interactive. Yes, I can see the chat. I can't always see the chat when I'm sharing, but I can see the chat. So if you want to pop in the chat and say hi and tell me a little bit about your business, that would be very helpful. Then that way, maybe I can even tailor my responses or examples around the kind of businesses who are watching right now. So feel free to, if you feel like sharing. So yeah, let's dive in. The first thing that we're going to talk about is, whenever I think about taking action in the business, I always like to make sure that we're bringing it back to a strategic view of your business. Where are you trying to go? What situation are you facing right now? So the first thing to do when we're talking about thriving online and offline during this difficult times is to get really clear on, well, what are we actually talking about? The thing that has made, well, I don't need to tell you guys what has made the last few months or last year so challenging, but one of the things that's made it particularly difficult is that we've kind of pinged between a whole different variety of, we've kind of been pinged between a variety of different situations. Things have been closed, things have been open, offices have been closed, offices have reopened. So when we're talking about the situation, it's almost like as a business owner, you have to look at this on an almost week by week basis and say, okay, where are we now? What's happening right now? So one of the things that I would suggest that you do, and you probably may well be doing this in a kind of organic way, is thinking about what the next couple of months look like for you. So we've had another shift once again. So again, as of yesterday, then the rules changed again, rule of 6 inside, hospitality reopening. So we've got offices reopening or offices going back in a more in a bigger way than they have been doing previously. So there are lots of things that have shifted again. And as a business owner, it's really good just to take that time and make sure that you're really thinking to yourself, okay, what are the changing footfall patterns going to be like? Am I going to start seeing more footfall during those morning and evening rush hours that I hadn't been seeing when the offices were closed? Am I going to see a different footfall pattern? What could be happening in the next couple of months? So what do I think the next couple of months ahead are going to look like? And also, most importantly, I think the thing that I've been saying time and time again to businesses during this time is the most important thing is to keep close to your customer. So when I'm talking about an audit and thinking about things shifting, thinking about your customer specifically, thinking about where are they, how has their life changed again? What are they now doing that they weren't before? Because everything that you do, every message that you have, every display that you have, every piece of information that's displayed in your store or online, you always want to bring it back to where is your customer? What are they feeling? What are they thinking? What's important to them right now? And how are their lives changing and how have they changed? So again, when we are going through this shifting changes, this sort of almost constant changes with the things being restrictions being lifted. But throughout this whole process where we've been seeing these sort of changing, shifting circumstances, as I said, on an almost week by week basis, another exercise, as well as thinking about, right, where am I right now? It's always a good point to just stop and say, right, where am I right now? Where's my customer right now? But then also thinking about a business review. Now, a business review sounds, you're probably thinking, well, we just simply don't have the time for a business review because this is a, as I said, it's a very busy time and there's lots of things going on. But when I say a business review, I'm not talking about something that needs to take you several weeks or days or even hours. I would suggest that you just take 10 minutes, 15 minutes, take a piece of A4 paper, fold it in half again, and then you've got yourself 4 quarters, and then you could start just brainstorming and thinking, okay, so where's the business right now? What are my strengths? So start off with the positives, make sure that you celebrate your successes, take a look back at what has worked, and identify over the last few months what has actually been really helpful to you in your business. I think this exercise is important is because businesses have had to make so many changes and there have been huge challenges, but there have also been things that worked. And again, as you negotiate this changing scenery and the changing circumstances, it's really important for you to stay connected to what has worked and what has resonated with your customer, what has worked for you as a business, and make sure that you celebrate these things. The other reason that it's important to celebrate is because it's a huge ask on all business owners to go through the incredible hoops that business owners have had to jump through in the last 12 months. So it's important that you do everything that you can to stay positive, to stay focused, and to keep your eye on the prize. So going over your business strengths is a really good way of not only accomplishing that pick me up, that motivation, but then also thinking about what has worked. And this is true for big businesses as well. There will be things that resonated with their customers, that worked really well, and there will be things that just weren't as successful. So it's important to really focus on what worked, what went well. Weaknesses, or as I prefer, this format that I'm talking about here is something you may well have heard of. It's called a SWOT analysis: strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. The weaknesses part, I would say, is I'm not a huge fan of the terminology. I prefer areas of improvement, but it's just worth thinking about, taking that time to reflect and thinking about, okay, what needs to improve? Is it, for example, that actually when you did go on, use your digital presence and maybe talk directly to your customer via video or via some footage of the shop, for example, that was really good. But then one of the weaknesses is that you just never get time to do it. And often what you find is that the opportunities that you'll identify will be directly related back to these weaknesses. So the weaknesses become the opportunities. So if, for example, as I said, using that example, that using your digital presence to talk directly to your customer was effective, weakness being that you never have time to do it, and the opportunity is finding ways that you can make it work for you in the day-to-day running of the business. Opportunities is also a great place for you to really think about, okay, well, what do I want to have going forward? Are there collaboration opportunities? So this is a perfect example of how small businesses coming together can really collaborate and support one another. And it's great to see the kind of support that Westminster Bid's been giving the businesses. But can you collaborate with other businesses to have local offers, to cross-promote each other if they've got an audience online? Can you tap into that, and vice versa? So in what ways can you collaborate with people who share a common audience with you? And then the last one is something that we saw a huge proliferation of during the pandemic, and this may be something that you've already explored in great depth, but alternative revenue streams is something that has come up time and time again as businesses have adapted. And I think the key thing I'd say as well is that in the same way that the businesses that managed to weather the storm most successfully during the pandemic were the ones that remained curious and the ones that really had a look and were committed to being creative and constantly looking at new ways of doing things. So the question is as things start opening up, can you keep that same mindset? Can you keep that same ability to keep thinking creatively and looking for the opportunities? Because whenever there are changes, there are always opportunities. It's just a question of looking for them. And then the threats, I call these the 4 a.m. thoughts. So these are the things that might wake you up in the middle of the night, but what do you want to just get down on paper? Just again, to get them out of your head and to be clear about, okay, this is the new variant, for example, okay, if, heaven forbid, that there has to be a temporary lockdown or something like that. Just being aware of what's going on, or that footfall may have shifted to a completely different pattern than from previously, all these kinds of things. It's worth just getting them down on paper so that you can at least have them out of your head and be able to think about them, or at least kind of park them and be aware of them, but don't let them take up too much of your thought space. So just to touch a little bit on the changing behavior of the customers. So as I said, it's important when you're doing this type of review, it's important to reflect on where the customer is right now. And you all know your customers better than anybody else. So you yourself will have the best idea of how your customers have changed during the pandemic and what they need now. But just to touch on a few big themes, just to keep in the back of your mind as you go into the reopening. Safety clearly is something that is absolutely at the forefront of businesses' minds. Customers' minds. There's lots of evidence to suggest that the willingness to visit a physical space, even now, even as more and more people are getting vaccinated, people are still really conscious about safety in a physical space. And one thing that is helping drive footfall is people feeling secure and supported. The other thing is information. So this is a really interesting one, because the information, why is that important? Why is information important to today's customer? Well, there's lots of research that was done by Capgemini Consulting during the pandemic, and specifically during last summer when things were reopened for a little bit. And what they found was that the browsing behavior had really dropped off. And it'd be interesting to see if you've seen anything like this as well. So there weren't as many people out browsing, doing the very kind of like exploratory behavior in shops. It was more transactional. So sales actually weren't down as much as footfall was down. Footfall was down more than sales, because the people who were coming were converting at a higher rate. So a higher percentage of people coming into physical spaces were purchasing, which it'd be interesting to see how that goes on. I don't know that we've got quite enough data yet to see how that's been panning out, but in the last few weeks. But what this is suggesting, and then so they did some deeper digging into what was going on, and they found that around a third of customers were saying that they would only come to a physical space if they knew that the thing that they wanted was going to be there. So they were specifically coming with an intention in mind. And then there was another third of customers who were saying that they were going to be doing their research before they left their house or before they went to a physical space. So it's important for you to remember this as you're opening up, especially when we come to talk a little bit more about digital, online, offline, and how the two really connect. And the key takeaway, I think, if you take nothing else away from today's talk, I be aware that the customer to have a sense of what they're going to find when they go to a space. And until we're kind of, I think, further along to the point where people are fully comfortable with physical spaces again, and maybe the vaccine rollout, complete rollout has happened, I think that we're going to continue to see this. It's basically, the idea is that you want to come and to find something that you know you want. So when you're talking to your customers, when you're communicating with them, then you want to be making sure that you're always, is it really clear to your customer what they're going to find? Are you talking about what's available in the space, the experience that they're going to have? And are you sharing things with them around safety and around find something that they really want to see, but they'll have a great experience, already safe. Ease of shopping. This is something, again, that just came, one of the drivers behind the increased increase online shopping. Again, people want it to be easy, they want it to be simple, but that also relates back to fears over safety and fears about having to spend large amounts of time in enclosed spaces. So making everything easy, making everything shoppable, making it really clear what they're going to find is all going to help you when you're thinking about where your customer is. And of course, increased omnichannel behavior, which in other words, people are shopping more than ever online versus online. Offline versus online. They're shopping across both of them. The customer journey is, if anything, is getting more enmeshed, which means that somebody may go to a shop, see something, go research it online before purchasing it for click and collect in store, or they may see something online and then visit it in the shop before buying online again. So the people are moving between the two. The other thing that's really interesting during this time period is, again, going back to some of the stats that have come out of this, there's a company called Near Street, which ties together the physical inventory in stores to a Google search. So it's all, I believe Central London was one of the places that they first trialed it. And what they found was that there was a 3-time increase in people searching for products online that they wanted to purchase offline. And the founders have said that they think that it will soon become as common to sort of Google, let's say, AAA batteries, and make sure that a shop's showing them as having them before going there, in the same way that we now currently check opening hours and other information. So there is lots of evidence to suggest that that connection between online and offline is getting even more than it was prior to the pandemic. Which then brings me on to your online presence. So when we're talking about this, how do we thrive online and offline, you can't really ignore that the two are connected, that if you want to have a strong offline presence or a strong bricks and mortar presence, that also is related to having a great digital presence. So online sales have grown. I'm sure you're aware of this, but just to give you a couple of quick stats. So in January 2020, 19% of all money spent in retail was spent online. Then by January 2021, that had jumped up to over 30%. So it was nearly a third of all sales were happening online. So clearly a big part of that was because the non-essential retail was closed during the pandemic. So that then pushed a lot of purchasing online. But nonetheless, what it has done is means that there are now demographics of people who previously would not have shopped online and now shopping online. And similarly, there are people who are purchasing, who maybe wouldn't have purchased certain product types online and now purchasing them online. So the $1 million question that nobody really quite has the answer to just yet is how much we've been on this trajectory. We've been on this upward trajectory since 1995 when online shopping began. It's totally accelerated, obviously, in the last year. So the question is going to be how much of that is going to step back? How much is it going to step back so that people, excuse me, are now purchasing more offline again? Are we going to stay at 33%? Is it going to drop back down to the 19%? My guess is we'll probably split the difference. So it will be higher than 2020, but lower than it was during the shops being shut. So again, the question for bricks and mortar retailers, though, is you can't ignore this. And many people did put a lot of time and effort into their digital presence during the time that their physical stores were shut. So now, how do you continue this? How do you continue to keep both of them going, basically? And again, I would say it's just about recognizing about how the two help each other. So if you want to drive more footfall into your physical space, that you are really concentrating on also driving your digital presence, because of course your digital presence will have a wider reach in a way that your physical store won't. But it's not to say that the two are unrelated. You often will find in places where people had physical stores and they shut them, that they actually see their online sales drop, because having a bricks and mortar store is actually a really, really good way of driving your online sales, because it's people see it all the time. It's really good for recall. People can't shop on websites they just don't even know about. So don't ever assume that one doesn't impact the other. And again, it's thinking about how can you drive people from your physical store online. So making sure that you've got your website URL on the window, on the bags, on the till points, that you're encouraging people to check out your website. And how do you incentivize the people on your website to come to store, whether it's through buy online, pick up in store, whether it's allowing them to return into store, or whatever it is, or is it some kind of particular, pop in and we'll give you a free coffee refill, or whatever it might be, but some small incentive to get them to come visit the physical space if they've purchased from you online. So it's making sure that you're encouraging these omni-channel behaviors, encouraging people to move between your multiple channels, because somebody who shops from you across multiple channels will, generally speaking, be a much better customer. They will be more loyal, they will be spending more, they're more likely to come back. So it's always worth, and whenever possible, thinking about how you're pushing people, not just pushing people using the digital presence to the physical store, but also vice versa, and generally getting your customer to interact with you in as many different places as possible. And I say it again, I say I don't think I can say this enough time, but staying close to your customer is also really, really key on when you're talking about your digital presence as well. So bringing them along on the journey. How can you show them what's happening in your store? Keep talking to them, be transparent, explain what you're doing, explain what show them everything, show them your cleaning routine, especially showing them what's the physical stock is. But also don't be afraid to ask them what they need from you. So have you asked your customers recently what would make you feel comfortable? Are you planning on coming back? Is there anything stopping you? Is there anything that we can do? It's not being afraid to communicate with them, and to again, ask them, have you shopped on my website, on the website, if they're visiting you in store? If they're in store, if they're on the website, have you been to see us in person? So thinking about, as much as possible, how can you keep this conversation going? And ultimately, when we're thinking about driving our sales, whether it's online or offline, particularly in digital, then thinking about, if you know who your customer is, then it makes it easier to ask that question, which is, how do you find more of them? So a big part, again, when we talk about how do we keep thriving as we reopen, obviously part of it is re-engaging your existing customers, but then part of it as well is can you find even more of your ideal customers? Are there more of them out there for you to approach? And that all starts with who they are. So being really, really clear on your ideal customer profile. Again, the great benefit of having a bricks and mortar store is you actually get to see your customers day in, day out. So you should start getting a really good sense of who they are. And then start thinking about, okay, well, what are they interested in? So which social media platforms are they on, or are they even on social media? Is it magazines? Is it TV shows? What is it? Who do they follow? Who do they talk to? And then this comes back to this idea that we touched on earlier about collaboration. So who else owns your ideal customer? I think if you almost ask yourself that question on a very regular basis, I think it will steer you really well when it comes to finding more of them. Who else has a relationship with my ideal customer? You're looking for complementary, non-competitive businesses, so people who also will serve the same customer. For example, you have an organic baby clothing brand, and maybe you reach out to an organic baby skincare brand. It's those sorts of connections which means that you can get yourself in front of somebody else's audience who also have a customer who is likely to be interested in your business. And part of that, continuing to grow that digital presence, is about always thinking that question: who else owns this relationship with my ideal customer? And also, the other great thing about knowing your ideal customer is that then you can spend time understanding them, getting to know them, active listening, in other words, looking at what they're talking about, what conversations are they having. Again, if you're seeing them in physical in the physical space, then that's hugely beneficial, because you can have those conversations. You can ask them, what are they worried about? What are they thinking about right now? What's important to them? I just want to touch slightly on a little bit more, going into a little bit more depth about your digital presence, because as I said, I think one of the key things really, if we're talking about the broad themes about reopening, then it's about then recognizing that your digital presence has been a lifeline for a lot of people during the pandemic when they couldn't be open the physical space, but really keeping it going because of the benefits that it brings to both the physical space and the digital space. So just wanted to touch a few things on about getting more traffic to your website. Again, for bigger businesses that have full digital marketing teams, this will be something that will be handled. But for small businesses who are juggling a lot of different hats, then it's worth just thinking about the fact that when you're talking about your digital presence and you're talking about driving more people to your website, to ultimately to create those omnichannel customers, to get more people to come to your business, to get more eyeballs, then you want to think about a variety of different methods. Social media is fantastic and it has been a godsend to many businesses, and it is a really important tool, but it can be difficult if it's the only one that you're relying on to drive traffic to your website. So my recommendation is, if you are listening to this today and you're thinking, yeah, I want to continue with my digital presence, I want to continue growing it, is for you to have a look at, there's a whole list of things here. Search engine optimization, especially for that's important for your website. It's really important for your physical store as well, making sure that anybody searching for your business in their area is going to be finding your website, and also your physical presence as well. So that's really important for both aspects. Content marketing, this is anything to do with blogs, anything to do with basically putting together content that is going to be speaking to your ideal customer. It is often the thing that gets put down at the very bottom of the list for very, very busy people because it takes time, but it can also be a really good way for you to get content onto your website that again feeds into your search engine optimization. Social media, as I touched on, I think it's really important as a tool, but don't forget that it's really important as a connection tool. It's not just about pushing out your content to show to a selling post. It's also about making connections with your customer and taking them on your journey with them. Email marketing is absolutely crucial and one of the most underutilized tools by small businesses. So if you don't have an email list, I definitely strongly suggest, or you have one that you don't use that often, and this is a perfect way. The great thing about email marketing is that you can collect emails, you can talk to customers, you have a way of collecting emails in store. You can also then remarket to those customers to encourage them to do all kinds of things, to encourage them to go to your website, to encourage them to come into your physical store. It's also a great way, if people have visited your website, that you can stay in touch and vice versa. So basically, email marketing is you talking directly to the warmest segment of your audience. So it's absolutely crucial and something that can be so beneficial. The other thing as well is just if you think about the conversion rates. So when we think about driving traffic to our websites, we sometimes think of it as all traffic being equal, but actually traffic from different places converts in very different ways. So social media traffic, where somebody's coming in from, say, an Instagram post, will convert typically at around 0.8%. If you had 1,000 people visit, then 8 of them would purchase. Generally, the average conversion rate is 2%. So if you have 1,000 people visit, 20 people purchase. So social media converts lower. The other thing is that if you then flip it and you look at email, traffic coming to your website from your emails generally will convert at 4%. So again, 1,000 people, that would be 40 people purchasing. So again, another just reason to really think about your email marketing and how you focus that. PR, press is absolutely crying out for stories about businesses reopening. So local press can be a really good option, but national press equally looking for stories about businesses and business, not just about businesses, but also business owners and how they've done. So there's plenty of opportunities to be featured, and it may just be something just to keep an eye out and to be open to opportunities. A great way to keep an eye out is just being on Twitter. They have a hashtag, which is journo request, JOURNO request. And they will quite often, journalists will post and say, I've seen hundreds of them. I'm looking for a bricks and mortar store who's reopening and to have a chat with them. So it's definitely something worth thinking about. And again, it increases your reach and increases that awareness. Collaborations, I feel like I've talked about in a lot of detail here. And then paid traffic is something that, it can be very beneficial. It works particularly well, I think, if you've got a really engaged organic audience already, and then it kind of amplifies your efforts. But of course, it can help you grow your reach and make more people aware of you. Okay, so this is just a point to say that when we talk about driving traffic to websites, that's really part of the job, but just being really aware of the fact that number one, not all traffic converts in the same way, but number two, making sure that your website is also fit for purpose and is not going to, because there's nothing worse than putting time, effort and ultimately money into driving traffic to your website if it isn't converting. So thinking above the fold. So if you think about a broadsheet newspaper being folded over, the most important part of it is the picture and the headline. And on your website, it's the same thing. It's what people see before they scroll on their phone or on their desktop. And it's that photo and the headline there that you want to make sure is really, really clear, because you have just a few seconds before somebody bounces away. So you want to make sure that it's really clear what you do. Don't be clever. Make it really obvious. Make it very much specialist kids shop in central London, for example. So for example, I've seen people who have a beautiful picture of a flower on their website, but ultimately, unless you're selling flowers, that's not going to be too helpful. So think about what you want people to see, and I would make it really, really easy for them to find some important information. So things like your opening times, things like your address, for example, just making it really simple so it's clear and people feel confident they're not going to have a wasted journey. You always want to put your best foot forward. So an attractive picture of your premises or pictures of your best sellers, for example, the things that make people most likely to stay. Making sure that you're going to capture their emails if at all possible. Can you have a pop-up which pops up, which encourages people to leave their email, but making sure that you're absolutely doing your best to make the most of the traffic that is coming to your website. Oops, sorry, flipping it around. And then just a couple of thoughts about how do you actually make it work, because I know, as I said, it's easy for me to sit here and talk all about the digital presence and everything else, but ultimately when you're reopening and you've got a physical premises to run as well as digital, then it's how do you combine the two of them. So think about managing your workload. Can you make online? I mentioned the Kickstart project. I'm sure most of you will have heard of it, but there are schemes available to help you get, for example, interns or people to assist you in your business. It's certainly something that I've had several clients working on, and perhaps it's something that that maybe they get some help with the digital aspect of their business as well. Making online part of the day-to-day, I think as much as possible, if you're kind of using your online presence as well, especially your social media channels to talk to your customers, then can you almost kind of keep it going as a conversation rather than having to block out hours and hours and hours to do content creation, which is completely unrelated to the day-to-day running. Can you just bring them along on the journey and do a quick video of you opening up or a quick video of you touring the shop floor? All of those things can be really beneficial and help connect the customer to you and your business as well. And then just a point here as well, this is again for physical stores. I've had this conversation so many times with physical stores about just if you really keen to grow your website and you've got an inventory management system, making sure that the website and the store talk to each other will save you so much time. And it can be quite transformative. So, this is certainly not. I've just spoken to several businesses over the last year where they've put in a web presence, and it doesn't sync back the stock to the physical store, and it's just created a lot of extra work. So it may be something that if you're in the situation that I can just tell you right now, if you can get it sorted out, it can be transformative. And then just the last thing before I wrap things up is it's about having a plan of action. So it's about thinking about when with all of this information going on, or thinking about everything changing, thinking about looking at a business review, thinking about things that you can do, how can you actually make it, how can you put together a plan of action? So how can you help kind of structure your plans? And if you're feeling overwhelmed, usually what I find is that it's because you probably feel like you have to do everything at the same time. And so I would suggest that you, again, take a few minutes and sit down and try and map out, okay, what are the urgent things? Well, you're probably doing the urgent things. You're probably dealing with those urgent day-to-days, but then think about, okay, I really, really want to sort out my stock system. Okay, well, that might be a long-term plan. That might have to you might have to say, do you know what, this is actually going to have to be a job for 2022 at this point. Or maybe I need to, as a medium term, I want to really look into improving my social media, or I want to start looking, maybe a short-term quick fix is just doing a double check that the website URL is visible everywhere in the shop. So there's lots of different things that you can do. There's lots of different elements, and it can be very overwhelming. So I would strongly suggest that you make yourself a plan of action. And if it feels overwhelming, try extending out the time frame. Try saying, instead of I'm going to do things in 3 months, I'm going to try and accomplish them in a year or 9 months. But just looking at, rather than assuming that you have to do everything all at the same time, you can actually pull it out. So there you go. I hope that was helpful. As I said, I'm over on Instagram most often at Resilient Retail Club. Of course, you can connect with me through Enterprise Nation, and I have a podcast as well, which is called the Resilient Retail Game Plan. So do you have any questions? I feel like I rattled through a rather large amount of information, but I'm very happy to take any questions.
Amazing. Thank you, Catherine. I have a quick question while people just take some time to pop a question in the chat. You mentioned email marketing then. I know you said about it's something people often don't do, but it converts so highly. So how would people in the first instance, I know you can pop an email capture on your website, for example, how do people incentivize their customers, their visitors to go ahead and pop their email address onto their website?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the thing with email lists is that people often feel like a little apologetic about it. So sometimes people will be like, okay, well, would you like to join my email list? Or they feel like they have to kind of persuade people. But I think the thing is if you are sending out useful information, information that the business, that your customers can use, that will really engage them, lovely products, useful tips, even if it's aftercare of the products or how to use them, or just tips about the whichever sort of topic area your products sit around, then actually that's something really exciting for customers. A lot of people love to get business emails if it's a business that they love, and so I would say that it's about inviting people to join. So, hey, did you know that I send out, two emails a month, and they're full of tips and information and occasionally offers. Please join us here. So it's kind of being proud of it and shouting about it. It can work really well on social media as well. If you say to people, oh, I'm just getting ready to send my newsletter. If you're interested, then pop your email in here, or sign up at this link, that kind of thing. So I think it's almost seeing it instead of as that sort of like slightly, oh, hi, do you mind if you join? It's almost like hey, this is amazing. You should join. And yeah, thinking about how do you reward your subscribers? Do they get, say, 24 hours access, you know, to a sale event? They get the first dibs on sale. They could get like a special price on one product a month, like a special subscriber price that's only available to people on your email list. So there's lots of ways to kind of make it feel something special and enticing, rather than something that you have to apologize for asking them to do.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think you do feel like, oh, I don't want to trouble you. Sorry for asking, but actually there could be discounts that you might specifically give to an exclusive audience. And aftercare is a really important thing as well, because obviously if you've got a product, you want to know how to look after it as well.
Yeah.
So that makes a lot of sense as well.
Yeah, and you might just want tips or more information about the business, or you might want to see pictures of other people using it or get inspiration, or, you know, there's lots and lots of different reasons. And I think I mean, when I think about when I get emails from businesses that I really enjoy shopping with, interacting with, then I'm very happy to get their emails because they're interesting to me. And if your customer's not interested in your emails, they will unsubscribe, and that's absolutely fine.
Sure.
That's, you know, in fact, having subscribers on your email list costs you money. So celebrating people who unsubscribe is great. I think just not being afraid to ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely have some time for questions. So if anyone wants to pop anything in the chat, go ahead, feel free. I'd love to just ask you while we wait to see if anyone's got anything to ask. I know it's a pretty comprehensive webinar there, Catherine. A lot of things covered. But what are you hearing from your clients? So your businesses who are reopening, what are they kind of asking you about? What are they concerned or struggling with at the moment, some of their challenges?
I think it's been a little bit choppy. I think some people had a rush and then have had a little bit of a lull. I think the biggest thing really is that whenever the customer's distracted, then we tend to see that distraction is bad for sales. So even something, for example, as minor as the World Cup, I shouldn't say, if there's any football fans watching, I apologize for saying that, but you know, something like I say minor when you compare it to like the pandemic, right? You know, so something like the World Cup or upcoming general election, though, both of those types of things, anytime it takes the customer's mind off purchasing, then it can be tougher. And I think that's what we have seen to an extent. I mean, I think it's been a mixed bag. I think some people have seen really good steady footfall. They've seen people coming back who they've stayed in really good contact with throughout. But I think we're also seeing then the customer is distracted because things are open to them that they haven't been open to them for a very long time. So haircuts is a great example, right? I don't know if there's anyone who's beauty or hair on the call, but you know, those are examples of where the customer, if you're a shop and the customer's thinking about having their nails done and their hair done, then you are going to see that impact. So I think that it's been a little bit of a mixed bag. I think that the fact that every couple of weeks, really, the rules change again, the things shift again, has meant that the customer's in a sort of state of figuring out what's going on in their lives. They're readjusting. You know, people are going out for dinner for the first time this week. All of this stuff, which just sort of seems like, wow, exciting. It's very distracting. So I think it does mean that it'll be volatile. I think that it'll be up and down, but I think eventually it'll change, and then, you know, things will happen. People coming back to the offices, obviously that will really help with central London footfall. Eventually tourists coming back, you know, all of those things are going to be really positive. But I think, yes, in terms of what I've seen, it's I think a mixed bag is the best I can say. Although, as I said, there certainly have been people who've been really pleasantly not surprised, but like, you know, pleasant. It's been a good, they've had good level of sales, but
all things considered, they've done
all
well.
things considered,
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And then we just have to think about Christmas. So we get day and then we can think about Christmas.
Oh my God. Yes, yeah.
Anyone in retail, Christmas will be starting, people are starting to think about it in August. So I'm sure.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And last year people were thinking about it in April. So, you know, we have seen, I mean, it's crazy. We have seen a shift. We have seen, in a way, I've heard more from my online customers, my clients who are predominantly online. A lot of them have seen a drop off, although they've seen it pick back up. But I think, as I said, every time something new happens, like, oh my goodness, we can meet people inside.
Yeah.
the customer's just distracted, and so yeah, I think that it'll all settle down. And I think there's a lot of reason to be hopeful that spending will rebound and will be there, and they're talking about a big economic comeback and all the rest of it. So I think that there's lots of reasons to be positive. It's just a question, I think, of wait and see, and hold your nerve, and keep showing up and keep talking about it. I think that's the key thing. Unfortunately, it's a vicious cycle. If you kind of step back because you're feeling uncertain, you're like, oh, that's it, no one's going to buy, or oh, I've just, or frankly, if you're just tired from a year of complete craziness, then you tend to, I think, step back a bit, and yeah, and in fact, what you need to do is step forward.
Sure. So consistency is key, it sounds.
Yes, exactly.
Well, if we have no questions there, as I say, you can always reach out to Catherine directly. We'll follow up with her email. If you've captured her Instagram, please go and check out her Instagram. She's super active there too as well. Thanks so much for sharing all of your insights this afternoon, Catherine. That was great.
Thank you so much for
and
having
thanks
me.
so much to South Westminster Bids for having us again. We have our last workshop for Enterprise Nation on Thursday. It's actually a fireside chat with Sonia Barlow around company culture, how to be an equitable leader. So if you want to join us then, that would be amazing. But for now, I will let you go. Thanks again, Catherine.
Thank you so much.
And I will be in touch, I'm sure, because that was great. And we will see you on the Enterprise Nation platform anyway. And I hope to see everyone on Thursday.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.